more or less stuff?
In your case, Dave, it would probably be less because you have a detention pond. You put a lot of money in a detention pond at your facility, and that was the reason for doing that. Yeah, and I agree with what Jeff's saying. You know, it's not, there's no perfect answer, but I wanted to be on record that for the reasons why I'm opposing this. And I opposed it the last time and nothing's changed. I wrestled with it, I really did.
I'm not questioning you're opposing. My question is, I'm just trying to understand that what does cause more water into the Susquehanna River, as we say?
You know, to be honest with you, if you're asking me, I would say those fields that are out there where there's nothing on them. And that's no reflection on the farming community. It's just the matter of fact of how it is. There's nothing to hold that stuff back. You know, especially in the winter, when you go past these fields and they take the corn down to the ground. When I was young, they left the corn stand this high. Now they eat everything up they can. All you had to do was drive around the township on this last rainstorm, and there's mud running across every road.
Not Martin Drive.
Well, I would disagree with you because I was
Come on
now. Jeff, I came down the side road, Bruner's Grove Road. You're right, Martin Road didn't, but Bruner's Grove, the water was running out. And I was just driving all over the place. But anyhow, it's just, there's no perfect answer, I understand that. But again, I wanted to make sure that everybody in that YouTube got the idea that I wanted a fee, not a tax. And everybody, it should be on land, not on your total value, because I said it before, and it's been stated in here, there's two houses side by side. Each are 2 acres of land. One's $100,000 worth of property in a house, the other one is $400,000, and yet they're contributing the same amount. Why should that guy pay 4 times more than the other guy? I don't understand the mentality of it. I just don't.
Well, another question is, you said, are we going too fast? I mean, what are other townships doing? That's a good
I haven't
question.
heard anything.
Well, do we know, Mr.
I don't
Township?
know, and I don't want to put these other gentlemen on the spot, but I haven't heard anything. We're going down the raceway like it's an Indy 500. Jeff, you get around, what'd you hear?
Well,
I don't want to put you on the spot.
no, that's fine, but not to that point, but 1 acre of land can be totally different about water infiltration. You know,
Okay, it's either shale or sand or loam or whatever.
where a solid grass in somebody's lawn will absorb a lot more water than an acre of farmland. An acre of farmland with a fully implemented conservation plan with years of no-tilling will suck in a lot more water than guys that are just out there ripping. And, you know, this past year, Scott and I, we had a project where we were trying to get these landowners to implement these plans.
Yeah.
And, you know, that, I think there is MS4 credits with getting that done. So that is helpful in the big picture. But, you know, just like everything else, you've got landowners, operators out there that just want to do it their way irregardless. But, you know, on a per acre basis, the range can be from one end of the spectrum to the other as far as holding and infiltration. And, you know, you can put in conservation terraces and such, which grab the water, or you get these big storms, slow it down and release it similar to what a basin would, and, you know, that stuff works. These storms we've had, it works. So, you know, I think the township as a whole can make a big leap forward if you know, more of this stuff got implemented, and I think it would help with the MS4 program. Scott and I have talked about this extensively a few different times. But, you know, there again, when you look on a land base and a per acre basis to put a tax on, some acres ought to have a whole lot higher tax than others just because of how they're handled. But how can you implement that fairly? There's just really no.
So there's variations everywhere you look.
It's just part of the system.
And let me say this, is keying in on what you just said and answering Mr. Hollinger's question. I think this fundamentally is the most difficult part of MS4. There's no black and white answer to how they're looking at this and what the actual exact requirement is going to be based off of. Is it Is it permeable, semi-permeable? How is it going to be done? How is it going to be defined? Exactly what metrics are being used? I mean, Scott, from the engineering side, from the documents that I've read, am I reading them incorrectly? Or that's my layman's interpretation of how I read this, is that there's no clear-cut answer here. So to say if it's residential versus a commercial building versus a farm, I haven't seen them pin that down either. And that's the difficulty in trying to balance this.
So there's big variations even in farmland. So the other question is, have you as supervisors, along with your manager or your staff, have you determined that what this $150-some thousand is needed to come from somewhere needs to be done in 2019?
The expenses are very well documented at this point, so really the debate's on how to pay for them.
So other townships will be facing the same thing as they're doing their budget?
Pretty much all the townships at this point have a pretty good handle on what their MS4 costs are. What they're grappling with is how do they fund it now.
And do you hear what they're doing?
A lot of them are engaging into some expensive studies to try and narrow down what we call variances between properties. And for $150,000, $200,000, we can do a similar study.
That's as much as a tax.
As much as the tax we're talking about, or we can try and simplify, and that was what the approach was.
At the
to
last
try and
meeting,
come
right?
with a fee schedule that's a little bit simpler to go with our known costs at this point.
So my question again isn't how you fund the $150-some thousand. My question is, you're saying as supervisors, the $150 needs to be in the budget for 2019? What if we spend $75,000 and didn't do as much? We would be in trouble with what? With who?
We would be in trouble with DEP at this point. This is the bare minimum to be compliant with our MS4 permit. So that right now, we know what our projects are for the next 5 years with our pollution reduction plan. We know what the costs are. We know what our reporting requirements are. We know the frequency we need to clean things like inlets out now. We know the frequency of reporting. We know what we have to do inspection-wise. And we have a very good handle on what those costs are.
What does this mean for the next 4 years after this first year?
Right now, the base cost that we're showing of about $151,000 a year is just that. That's the base cost.
Every year it'll be the same?
That would be the same, except if we do not get the DEP grant that's proposed right now. We have that DEP grant for $380,000 that was supposed to be known by the end of October, and now we're told that we will not hear from the governor until January or February of next year. This budget right now is assuming that we get that grant to fund our largest plan, our pollution reduction plan, our largest project.
Thank you for that. Another question, if you had this $150,000 on, what percent tax increase does that mean? I mean, you might have another increase in addition to this, but what is that percent tax?
$150,000 is roughly a 7.5% property tax.
7.5%.
You did take into consideration if the lender's going to be paying these, that most of them pay all the taxes in a 2% discount?
That was including the 2% discount.
Yeah.
One of the big numbers out of this 151,000 is over 82,000 for Becker Engineering. What is the connection there with them as far as what needs to be done next year?
That's actually engineering, and that's the 15% for our project that we have to comply with for our DEP grant for Reamstown. That's the majority of it. So we have to come up with matching funds of 15% of that $380,000 grant.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that we evade this thing. I'm suggesting, simply stating that, again, I think we're leapfrogging down the road. I read the papers, I saw where Akron Borough passed a 30% tax increase. There was no mention of an MS4 in there.
But do we know what it was? Do we know
Do we know what?
if that was part of it or not?
Well, the newspaper should have put it in. I would hope they'd do that. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't sitting in that meeting. But you think something like that would grab the headlines that, I mean, they had alley repairs for $10,000. Now, their MS4 is gonna be more than that. I'm not stupid enough to think it's gonna be less than $10,000. But I haven't seen anything from anybody around us. whether it be Adamstown, Denver Borough, West Cocalico, Elizabeth Township, Ephrata Township, Ephrata Borough. I haven't seen anything in the paper. Alice, your reporter, have you seen anything across your, I'm just wondering.
I heard West Cocalico didn't have to raise theirs.
I'm not suggesting taxes, I'm not suggesting taxes. I'm talking MS4.
Well, that's what I mean, they have none.
But again, I'm narrowing down to MS4. I'm not concerned with their taxes versus ours. That's not my concern. My concern is that I haven't heard anything from anybody about an MS4 tax. That's where I'm coming from. And I'm just saying, must we do this right this instant? We're gonna have to do it sometime. I'm not naive enough to believe that we don't have to do it. I'm just asking the question out loud. Must we do it right now?
Well, Doug, I heard from your manager that if you don't take a flat rate across the whole tax base, then you'll have to spend a certain amount of money to study all the properties to see who gets charged what. Is that right, Scott? Mr. Russell?
I mean, each municipality has done, the ones that are looking to impose a stormwater fee, which I understand right now are Manor Township, East Lampier Township, Manor Township, West Hempfield Township, are the ones that I know of right off the top of my head. They're all engaging in studies right now that are a lot more detailed than what we were talking about doing. The city of Lancaster, when they imposed their stormwater fee a couple of years ago, did in a way that I would not agree with this township. They did it based off of percent impervious. And I thought that was a double tax on businesses, because the businesses like yours, like Pepperidge, the other ones, have put in stormwater fees. And in the case of the city, the biggest contributor to their stormwater fee is Park City Mall, who happens to have all the proper detention structures. And now they're paying for an exorbitant fee to the city, so that the fee is kept very low for the residences that are in the city. I think the percent impervious methodology that some of the municipalities in the past have considered is very business unfriendly. So I'm not sure how those other municipalities are going to grapple with how they're going to impose their fees. I know that said that they've engaged in engineering studies, and most of them are looking probably adopting fees mid-year next year.
And those businesses, because like yours, they've done a lot of the improvements already. They have the correct retentions in there and all of the water runoff. So they're not really addressing the root of the problem.
Well, you're probably not ready to answer this yet, but the tax increase for the increased expenses in addition to this MS4 tax, what, if you put them both into a tax fee, what's the total tax increase?
It'd be roughly, I don't know the exact percent for the stormwater, but what is for a general property tax is a 5.3% property tax.
5.3 plus a 7.5.
Plus roughly a 7.5.
So we're talking 13% total.
Roughly.
So if we increase the taxes to cover the normal projected business plan or budget for 2019 and add this MS4's cost into that, we're talking about a, what, 12, what is this, 12%?
It's 5.5, 5.3 plus 7.5. So roughly just under 13.
That's a hypothetical.
Yeah, hypothetical, yeah, I'm just in the ballpark.
That's a hypothetical at this point.
And the board hasn't gotten to that step yet either, about actually what percent for the tax yet.
Right.
If we do a 5.3 and use our capital reserve and try to get the stormwater more manageable.
I think I'm pretty confident to say that you will spend roughly $151,000 next year on stormwater, regardless of where the fund's going to come.
We've also heard back from our business community based off of some meetings that were held. They're pushing back on it also and would like to see it postponed somehow. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes.
Do you know how many nonprofits are in the township? Currently, we do get billed for our hydrant and light taxes as it stands. So how many are there? Because your churches are gonna fall in that and all your other groups. You're not just looking at your fire companies, there's probably gonna be a good slew of that. And some of them are gonna be big landholders.
Right, I'm not sure what the number for that is, but at one point when we were looking at doing the fee base where the nonprofits were included, to be honest with you, it was a tiny fraction of what the total millage was. So I
Yeah,
don't know the exact number.
But it was looked at, so it's not really a lot then.
It's not a big contributor one way or the other when you look at the bottom line.
I mean, we do get billed for the other taxes as is, so it's not unheard of to have that thrown at us.
Your nonprofits here are your churches, fire
High school.
companies, the schools.
Hospital.
Yeah, well, for the profit, at least.
So they're your big money holders then too, for profitabilities. I mean, we got a church above us that's huge, we own a fire company itself owns a lot of property and buildings, so there's some value there in that nonprofits, and they're getting bigger because of that break also.
But in terms of the total assessed value, the nonprofits are a very small part of the other business element. So my original question before you're doing the taxing, is there anything structured, like is something cost-wise that's going to need to be added to the budget or taken out of the budget on the cost side, not the revenue side? Because then that goes back to the revenue discussion at this point. So then, Mr. Chair, if you can go back a step and actually go over Resolution 2018-24, the tax rate for 2019. So the motion you have right now is combining, I guess I'll explain this a little bit. So the motion you have right now, the resolution 2018-24, includes in it, per what you decided 2 weeks ago, by a 2-1 vote, the rolling and combining of the general fund tax increase of 5.3% plus the additional monies required for the MS4 stormwater. And that increases the millage to a rate of 1.883 mils, which is what you have in your document right now, which is roughly approximately a 13% increase. Now, the reason it's not called out separately as a stormwater tax and a general property tax is on Monday when last week I had our township solicitor look at the legal steps that we would have to go to actually impose a stormwater tax. And to include it on the property tax, at this point, it would have to be just one overall property tax increase. And then in January, you would have to do enabling ordinance to basically break it out so that it be listed separately on the tax bill as a stormwater tax. So that would be a second step if you decide to go forward with this tonight.
I personally would rather do a 5.3% tax increase, 1.733 mil. Total. At this time.
Say that again.
And then you would take it out of the reserve account? Is that-
Yeah, take it out of the reserve account.
How does that square with the 10% on
You
25%?
I would need the chair, if that's the will of the board, the chair to pause the meeting, and if you, myself, and Liz need to go back in the audience and back to their office and look at the budget at this point. If that's where the board wants to go.
Well, I'm sorry, I was writing something else. What did you say?
1.733 mil, which would be a 5.3% increase.
Okay.
So,
But then how are you funding the MS4 expense?
capital reserve.
You have, how much do you have in reserve?
We have $600,000 in reserve that is not restricted.
607,752. But in conjunction with that, if we do that in conjunction with that, then we have to execute the tactical part of the plan that we that was proposed and we were looking at, which is, we're gonna need the business leaders' help to
Contact our representative.
contact our representatives, get a political action committee somehow designed, some kind of lobbying organization to get up to Harrisburg and find out exactly what is going on with MS4, what are the actual requirements, the actual timelines, because the state's just passing that off from the federal government down and rolling it down here to us.
Look, you won't get that answer from your state reps because they make the law. You'll have to get that from the administration, because that's where it's coming from.
Right.
I just came from a meeting for the Denver House over at Fox Chase, and one of the state reps is out working on this right now. We had the chamber breakfast this morning at Lancaster, and it was brought up there, and Representative Dave Zimmerman addressed it, but it's there, they don't like it, but they can't change it, and it's gotta be, yeah, it's not that simple just to have a one-time, I mean, there's many people aware of this, but then the other side is, there's people that want us to pay this to get the river cleaned up, you know? So there's two sides,
No, and we're in the middle.
yeah.
Okay, Chair, I mean, is that what the board wants to do at this point?
That's what I'd
Yes,
like to do.
yes, that's what the board wants
Because
to
I'm
do.
not gonna roll that tax out.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can we pause the meeting
Yeah,
so
we'll
we can
pause
go
the
back
meeting.
and actually manipulate the budget right now?
Okay.
No, we're not allowed to talk about it.
Nope.
Al?
Do you shut that off too?
Yes.
Probably should not do it.
Or pause it?